Welcome back. We're now going to focus on grade 12 work, and we're looking now today at the concept of speciation. Now remember that Lamarck and Darwin were amongst the first scientists to reject the idea of fixity. Remember that the idea of species fixity had existed for thousands of years, where people thought that an organism had been created in a specific way and stayed that way, unchanging over hundreds and thousands and millions of years. Now, Darwin and Lamarck rejected the idea of fixity, but it was only Darwin that was able to come up with an explanation for how speciation actually happened. And when we talk about speciation, we are talking about the formation of a new species from populations of already existing species. And this interested Darwin, and he came to find out these ideas, or stumble upon these ideas, on his around the world trip that he went on that ship called the Beagle that we spoke about last week. Darwin saw that individuals can crossbreed and that they can produce fertile offspring. They are considered a species, and that is also our definition of species that we work with today. But Darwin saw on his voyages to the Galapagos Islands that there were some interesting ideas of speciation. Now, if we look at this definition of speciation that we have, that a population of organisms that are able to mate and that can successfully produce fertile offspring is a species, we need to look at the idea of populations that are maybe potentially interbreeding. What if we had a population of funny little orange fish in this lake, Lake A, and the same species in Lake B, but Lake A and Lake B is separated by this big mountain range? Clearly, because fish can't fly, there's no ways A could get into B's area. That would be impossible. But if they were put together, and if they were allowed, given the opportunity to breed, could they? If the answer is yes, then they are still the same species. If A no longer can breed with B, then they are considered to be a different species. And so we come to a very important concept in biology, and that is the recognition species concept. If A and B are separated by a barrier, but they still recognize each other's mating call, or mating dance, or show of feathers, or in this case of our little frogs, the mating call, the croaking song that they produce, if they can still recognize it, even though they are separated, they are still one species. As soon as they can no longer recognize the mating call, then they are no longer the same species. So this is what we're talking about, or this is what we mean when we're talking about speciation. We can see from these two frogs that possibly originally they were living in the same area. They were members of the same population living in the same area, but a barrier has formed, and of course we know that if frog A tried to cross that barrier, they'd probably die. And so we are reducing what we call the gene flow between population A and population B. It becomes no longer very easy for population to cross over the road to get to population B. And we may find after many, many, many generations that population A develops a different call. Now, why would that happen? Well, maybe, just maybe, on this side of the road where population A lives, there is a big town. And there's a lot of noise from all of the factories and people and motor cars that are riding around in the town. And so the frogs now in this population have to change their mating call. Maybe they have to become a higher pitched mating call. Maybe they have to make a mating call that is a lot shriller. And maybe they have to deliver that mating call later in the evening rather than earlier in the evening because it's quieter. And as soon as frog A can't understand frog A's mating call, we would say that this population has changed sufficiently that no longer can the two populations interbreed, and we would say that speciation has occurred. More after the break.